What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's a good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here, and the New York Jets, Aaron Glenn, Darren Mougey, the media company, they decided to bless us on a Tuesday. Dropped off a 3-pack. We got a chance to check out what was titled the Offseason documentary. Basically went into everything that occurred with signing Aaron Glenn, building out the new staff, free agency approach, and then, of course, tackling the draft. And there's a couple of things that I would say I learned, or at least that were notable to me running through these documentaries, right? One is there wasn't really any leaks anywhere. And I'll talk about these points as we get into, each of the parts. But just overall, there wasn't a leak. There wasn't really any new or vital information, I would say, for people that are, generally speaking, not even like feverishly just searching New York Jets news 24/7. But for anybody that was generally aware of what's going on, there wasn't really anything crazy that I actually learned from this that I took away and shocked me or completely surprised me. So I think that is a huge plus, right? You had Aaron Rodgers talking about snitches and trying to get the rats out of the building the entire, what I feel like 2 years that he's been here. And so to know that things have been tight-lipped, right? You didn't have draft leaks about who we were expecting to get. And, I think a lot of it was just kind of common sense. We have a need here. This is a player. Seems like he fits in really, really well. Skill set is loved, etc., etc. You can run down that list and point it out. But I think that's the first huge step, right? Now, when we look at this from part-to-part standpoint, part one, which again focused on Aaron Glenn and the coaching staff, he emphasized 2 points. One was he wanted teachers, and this is something every staff is going to put some level of emphasis on, right? Because that's the core of what it means to try to develop somebody, which would go into the second piece. He wanted developers, but we've seen this with Robert Saleh. We've seen them hire, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he was like an instructional designer guy that was supposed to, come in and I guess develop and teach guys new methods and ways of trying to connect with the players and get them to learn concepts, etc., etc. Maybe going too far, maybe not. Nonetheless, sometimes less is more, sometimes more is actually more. But that is what we are expecting to get out of this coaching staff. People that can teach the concepts, can break it down simplistically, and can see those get executed to perfection. And I think when you just see how, of course, Aaron Glenn was able to develop things with Detroit, it seems like a easily translatable enough opportunity, especially considering he has Steve Wilkes and a lot of these former players turned coaches, in addition to just the level of experience that some of these guys have. There was an emphasis on getting guys to play above their draft slots, which was also a bit intriguing to me. So he essentially highlighted we want the day 3 guys to play like day 2 guys, the day 2 guys to essentially earn their keep and be looked at as, what could have been first rounders. And for the first round guys to end up in a Hall of Fame. And by that token, you'd also imagine the undrafted free agent guys would flow through that same progression, right? And it's only intriguing just because I don't think it's something I've heard specifically called out in terms of when I've heard Aaron Glenn speak. He kind of applies what we hear a lot in like the business world of things, right? When you're speaking to like executives or you're in these meetings and stuff, you want to apply an action, you want to apply a time, a why. Basically, you shouldn't really come out with any questions from a generic standpoint. Those should be easily answered. If there's some specificity that's required, that's a little bit different. But I like the fact that you can kind of see the high level thinking of Aaron Glenn, and then you can, for the real football junkies, you can kind of get into the nooks and crannies of how he's gone about selecting coaching staff members, how he's gone about tackling free agency, how he's gone about this draft based on his experience or just based on whatever this is going to look like for the New York Jets and kind of this, Detroit Lions 2.0 style experiment that's going on. And then ultimately for the final point in part one, there was a sneak peek into Jamie and Sherwood, right? And kind of I guess, his late budding leadership opportunity moments. And for one, I just love seeing that aspect in general because we hear about it. We don't necessarily always get to see it, or we see it from like the pre-game kind of huddle piece. What we saw in that part one documentary looked like maybe something towards the halftime or maybe right before the game is starting, and they were looking to either secure that win or turn some things around. And one, I love that moment, but two, there was also like you seen Sauce Gardner with kind of like a blank face. You seen some guys like nodding and obviously tuning in and paying attention, but it was also just a kind of a reopened wound for me, seeing how that locker room kind of just faded into a shell of itself, I would say. There's a lot of personality traits on this team prior to the additions. There's a lot of boisterous, a lot of loud, a lot of vocal guys. So obviously you want to be quiet when a quote unquote leader is talking. But these guys just really kind of seemed like in a trance, out of it, just kind of going through the motions. And so that's not a knock on Jamie Sherwood itself, but just something that, you know, I want to see something different if we end up getting more kind of background, I guess, details or film into seeing some of those kind of moments, right, under Aaron Glenn. For part two that focused on free agency, Fields was attracted to Aaron Glenn, as we know, called him a culture changer, obviously has played against him a ton. It is always something a note to me when a offensive player speaks up a defensive guy, especially one that you've gotten the better of. It would be easy to write those guys off or kind of turn them into laughing stocks and stuff. And I don't think Justin Fields has much rope or really credibility to do any of that. But still, and of course, you know, you could throw out there, what else would Justin Fields say? But overall, I think Aaron Glenn has been a driver. It hasn't looked the same because we haven't done these flashy signings and we haven't gone out there and tried to sell that this is a guy that's going to fix everything, including Justin Fields. It's more so like this is the epitome of someone we want at this position and we're comfortable that we can get them to play at a high level. It's not that he's coming in and we're suddenly winning 12 games and we're going to be winning Super Bowls out the gate and all this kind of stuff. So love all of that. Then the free agency, focusing on players that have performed well at some juncture of their career. And I think this is big because it's also kind of a huge 180 from what we've seen before. Normally we're paying the guys that have had a huge a huge career year, or they've excelled at an elite level at some point. That's not even necessarily the case with many of our free agents here. It's that they've done something maybe exceptional at some point, like Justin Fields in his 1K yard rushing season in year two. But overall, you have a bunch of guys like these Brandon Stevens and these Jay Tufeles and Byron Cowards and such that have really just been solid to maybe above average in certain aspects in their career. And Aaron Glenn is betting on the coaching staff being able to say, we feel like we can take these things that they've done really well to an above average and elite level, and these things that they aren't doing well up to a serviceable level, and we'll see how those things shake out. And of course, I've talked about us playing the compensatory pick formula game. These are guys that if you can get a lot of these guys outperforming and they end up going elsewhere and you're filling them in with draft picks and kind of recreating the same free agency approach, then you start being able to get into those conversations like what the Ravens are doing and what the Eagles are doing, and what the Rams are doing in teams like this, right? So something that I'm going to be paying attention to specifically to how this free agent class ends up looking by the time it's all said and done. And then I think overall, just the consistent messaging that we're seeing when it comes to the players. They are going to be utilized with something already in mind. There's going to be a strong fit in terms of the culture, what Aaron Glenn is looking to create and establish with the Jets, and even just the locker room fit, right? You don't want a huge disruptor like even though he was found to not have some of the crazy stuff that has been put on his name, but like a Richie Incognito type doesn't feel like someone that would necessarily fit into this locker room, even though he kind of feels like he has that New York, New Jersey type grit, right? So, again, just all pieces that kind of intrigued me. And then finally for part 3, and for you guys that are still sticking around at this point in time, please help me out here. I didn't have time to go back and find it in the video, but we heard this reference of star mentioned over and over and over, I believe throughout all three parts. And it referenced the qualities in a player that they were looking for, right? And I think like A was aggression, R was resilience, S and T, I can't, it's not coming to my mind right now. But if you guys remember, recall, or you've seen it recently, drop it in the comments for me. And then overall, three traits that they were really looking for, right? Kind of like foundational level stuff. He wanted somebody that was going to bring a high level competition to the team, to their position, to their unit. He wanted someone that was going to endear themselves to the other players, right? So this is a situation where you don't want let's take Garrett Wilson, for example, right? Obviously a leader in that receiver room. If he was putting up 1,500-yard seasons, I wouldn't imagine it would matter to Aaron Glenn if the rest of the locker room is running around and they're saying he's G5 is actually kind of a dickhead. We hate him, but he helps us secure games, so we're willing to live with it, right? I think he wants guys that can handle success and also be, I want to say humble, but that looks different to certain people, but kind of be humble in that winning mentality, that winning culture that he's looking to establish. And then ultimately just the winning mentality, right? We don't want guys that are losing. We don't want guys saying, all right, I'm coming to the same old Jets. This is going to be something where I just go through the motions. I'm looking to do enough to earn another check type situation. He wants the guys that hate losing more than they love winning. And as a result, we're going to end up winning a lot of games. So it was an interesting, I feel like, difference between this documentary and what we've been seeing leading up, or at least the past couple under Robert Saleh, because it felt like more of a sneak peek and we were getting things. I feel like I've seen something like a draft board, a portion of a draft board or something crazy, but just some of the conversation pieces and all that kind of stuff. But let me know what takeaways you guys had from the offseason, if you've been able to watch all three or even just the parts that you have caught so far. I'll catch you guys again. Peace.